We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us Wednesday. The number is 737-7587 if you want to jump in. This is John Crenson. He is the Executive Director of Operation Stand Down. He and his organization here to help veterans stand down.
That's right.
When they come back, the military term, stand down and get their life back together. And we want you to know that the service is out there. That's one reason we're doing it. We have some calls I want to take, and then we're going to get into more of the psychology behind why some of these veterans end up needing this help, which I think a lot of us understand, PTSD and all that, and then also the services that are available out there. So jump in if you're a veteran or you know of someone going through a hard time, or if you have a question about Operation Stand Down. Let's go to Joe. Joe, good morning.
Good morning, Nick.
Hey, Joe, what's on your mind?
First of all, I just want to say thank you to all the veterans and what they've done for this country. But my main question is, the gentleman there's after World War II, the Veteran Administration seemed like they took care of the veterans in a pretty good manner. But since then, it's been going downhill, and it had recovered any, and there's hundreds of organizations, and not picking his out, but there's hundreds of organizations out there are out begging the public for money to support our veterans. And I just wonder how many of those are out there begging for money are legitimate organizations. And just see what the gentleman has to say on that, because the government should be taking care of our veterans. And like I said, after World War II, it seems to be that every day, there's something up where the veterans can't do this, can't do that. They're overcrowded. It's 3 months before you can get an appointment and all that kind of stuff. I'd just like to hear his comment on that. All these organizations is begging for money. Do you think that the money is really going to the veterans, or is most of it, like a lot of charities, 90 cents out of the dollars going into administrative costs and 10 cents going to the veterans?
All right. What you think?
A very legitimate concern, and we are a legitimate organization. So
Did you take donations?
We do. We do. And again, the majority of our funding comes from federal dollars, but we do seek private funds. We're seeking more of them to give us more flexibility. What I can tell the gentlemen and viewers is that 87 cents of every dollar given to Operation Stand Down goes to our programs, and that is a high, and that's an exceptional
That's very
amount.
high.
It is.
I want to say this: whenever I get a call like that, where people say, "Well, I want to know that all my money goes to," the realistic thing is, folks, it costs money to raise money, okay? And so when you think, well, I want 100% of my dollar, well then really, I mean, people that are raising and good professional fundraisers are worth their weight in gold. The way I look at it, if you have a fundraiser who's really good and he raises $10 million for you and he gets half of it, hey, fine, take your $5 million, buddy.
Sure.
But he raised $5 million. You don't have that ace in the hole, and he's not raising $10 million, and you get some guy who just takes nothing really, and he only raises $100,000. So just keep in mind, it costs money to raise money. Now, I know there's a threshold. And 87 cents, did you say?
87 is ours.
That's quite high.
That's
and that's very good. But trust me, folks, if 50% of it so goes, depending on the amount, it costs money to raise money. I just want to throw that out there. So, but yeah, your organization, in the 80-cent realm is quite good. I don't want anyone saying, well, what happens to the other 13 cents? You have to pay the people doing the fundraising, folks. That's the way it works.
Well, and also in the management.
Never goes straight there. You've got to manage to raise money.
Exactly, and that goes to our financial staff. It goes to our human resource staff. We have 40-plus, staffers. Yeah. So it takes, 3 or 4 people to help make sure they have all the resources they need.
Totally understand. Now, the point to him is, though, there are folks out there, and I don't know if those maybe sometimes raising money in your name or others, that Jennifer Krause and our I-team did a story a few years back, kind of approaching some of these folks collecting for the veterans outside some stores, and she did some checking, and they weren't really affiliated with anything specific, and so there was some you really need to check. I mean, you see it first, give to the veterans. Yeah, you want to give right there. You don't always know if
and I can provide a resource for that. Giving Matters is a fantastic resource to vet different organizations, and the general standard for a very responsible, effective, and effective use of dollars is if 70 to 75 cents on the dollar goes to programs, that's considered to be a very responsible organization. And some can spend lower than that on programs and still be good ones, especially your larger ones. But if they come to you and say we're spending 70, 75 cents on the dollar, that's a very responsible organization.
I would agree at that level. But again, if you have an ACE fundraiser, I look at the total amount of money brought into the organization. And if you have someone who's just lights out, and he gets a big percentage of it, but he's bringing so much more money than you would have had anyway.
Oh, we need those folks.
You do.
We
So
need those folks.
you pay for good fundraisers, and they're worth their weight in gold if you have good ones, guys. So let's go to Mark. Mark, good morning.
How you doing, Nick?
Hey, Mark, what's on your mind, my friend?
I want to ask the gentleman, how come they refuse people that's been in the Army Reserve? I feel like I'm a veteran. I got out with an honorable discharge, but they said they don't help people that's been in the reserves.
Oh, did you check with Operation Stand Down? Was that it, or are you talking about just some other group, or was it Operation Stand Down that could not help you? I guess he hung up. I don't know.
Well, I can answer the question generally.
We need to talk about who qualifies for Operation Stand Down.
And it can get fairly tricky, but in general terms, to be considered to be a veteran status, you have had to serve some time on active duty.
Okay.
So
if you're a reservist,
or a National Guardsman, and you've done your weekends per month and your 2 weeks a year, and gone to a few schools through your career, then you will not qualify for most veteran benefits. You will qualify for some state benefits, but not most of the federal ones. If you are a guardsman or reservist who is deployed for operations for Iraqi freedom and enduring freedom, then in most cases you will qualify for as a veteran and for benefits. Such as myself, I've been a traditional guardsman my entire career, coming up on 30 years.
Okay.
But I've deployed to Iraq, deployed to Afghanistan. I've deployed in support of response operations for Hurricane Katrina, Hurricanes Gustav. So my time on active duty for those operations qualify me as a veteran.
Oh, okay. That's interesting, by the way, too. If you're in the Guard and you respond to a natural disaster or something, that's also
at the federal level. You have to be federalized. So if you've responded to tornadoes, say in West Tennessee, for a week on state active duty, then you would not qualify for federal benefits for that period of duty. Would not qualify you for that.
All right. I wanted to ask you a little bit more just about the psychology of it. You gave us a good example of that individual from Vietnam and how it all of a sudden hit him 30 years later. What else is it? Is it still mostly PTSD? These are some soldiers coming back that obviously have some real, perhaps mental issues because of what they witnessed or went through. And then, of course, there's the real obvious physical things that could happen. They've lost limbs. They have these injuries. Is that at the heart of it all? I mean, when you see some of these people that are homeless, what is the underlying reason for it?
Yeah, it could vary, but a lot of it has to do with PTSD and mental health issues. A lot of it may have to do with substance abuse that is caused by MTS or PTSD, or that's how they self-medicate
themselves because it's awful. Yeah.
And a lot of it too. We find that right now there's 1.5 million veterans that are at risk of becoming homeless, and the underlying reasons that we're finding are there's a lack of a social network for these veterans when they come back to regular society, and then they begin to go into social isolation. 20% of our veterans live alone.
So they're coming back. Were these veterans that didn't have families when they went over in the first place, or
they may have had dysfunctional families before they went over in the first place, or they may be back and not where their families are located. For example, we just recently had a Marine come through our program. His family is in Ohio, and they're a very upstanding family. His father's on the board of a major hospital in the Cleveland area. But this young man is a Marine. He found himself in Middle Tennessee, disconnected from his family, found himself on hard times. His wife got into some trouble, and then he fell apart. Found his ways through Operation Stand Down, and he is a success. He just graduated from our housing program a few months ago, and so he's not all the way there yet, but he's out of our program, now getting his feet rooted in society, and appears to have the makings of a great success. But he didn't have that support network down here in Middle Tennessee that he needed to have. And that's what we find. When soldiers and airmen and sailors and Marines and Coast Guardies all came back from World War II, they had the American Legions and the VFWs as part of their social network where they could go and remain connected and be with people who had a similar experience. Those organizations still exist. They're still great organizations, and they are reaching out very hard to this new generation of veteran, but there's just a 70-year generational gap, and for some reason those connections just aren't being made. But there's been nothing yet to replace those organizations for this generation of veterans.
I wonder, that's a really good point. I've done my share of stories over the years dealing sometimes to get comment from them on some military issue with the what were the groups, the organizations?
Like American Legion.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had a mental block there. American Legion groups. You go in there, and a lot of times I remember going in, and it's mostly, and maybe not as much now, there's World War II vets.
That's
and
right.
Vietnam veterans are the ones that the Legion posted. Great guys, and they have these clubhouses, and they get together and they do those things. I wonder if it's changed internally there now, there. If you still walk in, and it's these old timers that are wonderful, but there's a generational gap between them and someone who just came back maybe from Iraq.
And those guys are great, and they reach out to us. I think one of the reasons that my generation of veterans have had such wonderful homecomings and have been treated so well is because those guys made sure that happened.
Right.
And they reach out to us to join their clubs. They reach out to us when we show up at their clubs. But they communicate with each other a different way. Their life experience is different. Their experience in wartime is different. And so it's just a disconnect. And trying to bridge that gap within those institutions that have existed for so long, I think is just difficult. So how are we replacing that today? We try to do that at Operation Stand Down.
We'll get into that in just a moment and more, and take more calls. We've got to take another quick break. We'll be back. If you are on hold, stay there. We've got some lines open. 737-7587. Help for the veterans, Operation Stand Down, and where they can go to get what they need. We'll be back right after this.